As we live in this world, learning is lifelong. Good day, Ma'am Rhodora. My name is Marjen Baulite, and we are the Group 7. Today, we'll be discussing about the language acquisition through social interaction. And our video presentation includes the following: the related theories, the language acquisition process, the examples, and the criticisms related to our topic. And without much further ado, let's proceed to the first part of our discussion.
Good day, everyone. I am RICA J&D ISIDRO, and I am here to tackle Vygotsky's sociocultural theory. Before we dig deeper into the theory, let us first know the psychologist behind it.
So who was Lev Vygotsky? Lev Simonovich Vygotsky was born in Russia in November 17, 1896 and died in June 11, 1934 at the age of 37. He graduated in 1917 from Moscow University with a law degree. He was a Soviet psychologist known for his work on psychological development in children. Lev Vygotsky was also often called as Mozart of psychology. During early 1930s, he introduced the zone of proximal development, or the ZPD, and the sociocultural theory. Sociocultural theory. Vygotsky laid the foundation for the interactionist view of language acquisition. According to him, social interaction plays an important role in the learning process and proposed the zone of proximal development where learners construct the new language through socially mediated interaction. Zone of proximal development is defined as the space between what the learner is able to do without assistance and what the learner can do with assistance from more knowledgeable other. So when we say more knowledgeable other, it is someone who has a better understanding or a higher ability level than the learner. And by the help of the MKO, children can learn effectively to a particular task, process, or concept. Vygotsky and language. Vygotsky believed that language develops from social interactions for communication purposes. He said that social interaction influences not only what we think about, but also how we think. So it means that social interactions develop our higher mental functions and help us with language development. Vygotsky viewed language as man's greatest tool, a means for communicating with the outside world. In 1987, Vygotsky differentiates between three forms of language: the social speech, private speech, and the inner speech. Language until the age of 2 is just a means of external communication, or the social speech. Language becomes private speech from the age of 3, which is directed to the self and serves an intellectual function, and later becomes silent inner speech and internal thought process. Vygotsky's theory of language is based on constructivist learning theory, which contends that children acquire knowledge as a result of engaging in social experiences. Overall, Vygotsky's sociocultural theory emphasizes the importance of social interaction and cultural context in language acquisition and cognitive development. It has had a significant influence on educational practices and has helped to shape our understanding of how children learn and develop.
Good day everyone, I am CHARMEE UNTALASCO, and I am going to introduce to you the other two proponents on which their theories are related to social interactions. We have here the Bandora's social learning theory and Tomasello's collaborative communication theory. But first, let me introduce to you the Bandora's social learning theory. Albert Bandura was born on December 4, 1925 and died on July 26, 2021. He is a Canadian-American psychologist who was the David Starr Jordan Professor in Psychology at Stanford University. He is known as the originator of social learning theory and the theoretical construct of self-efficacy. Bandura was born in Mundere, Alberta, an open town of roughly 400 inhabitants, as the youngest child and only son in a family of 6. Bandura graduated in 3 years in 1949 with a Bachelor of Arts from the University of British Columbia, winning the Baulite Award in Psychology, and then moved to the then epicenter of theoretical psychology, the University of Iowa, from where he obtained his Masters of Art in 1951 and PhD in Clinical Psychology in 1952. Bandura died at his home in Stanford on July 26, 2021 from congestive heart failure at the age of 95. And now let us know what is Bandura's social learning theory. The initial phase of Bandura's research analyzed the foundations of human learning and the willingness of children and adults to imitate behavior observed in others, in particular aggression. He found that, according to social learning theory, models are an important source for learning new behaviors and for achieving behavioral change in institutionalized settings. As you can see in the picture, Albert Bandura speaking in social learning theory and entertainment education at Stanford University in March 2015. And social learning theory posits that there are 3 regulatory systems that control behavior. First, the antecedent inducement greatly influences the time and response of behavior. The stimulus that occurs before the behavioral response must be appropriate in relating to social context and performers. Second, the response feedback influences also serve an important function. Following a response, the reinforcements by experience or observation will greatly impact the occurrence of the behavior in the future. Third, the importance of cognitive functions in social learning. For example, for aggressive behavior to occur, some people become easily angered by the sight or thought of individuals with whom they have had hostile encounters, and this memory is acquired through the learning process. This theory suggests that language acquisition is a result of observing and imitating the behavior of others. Children learn language by watching others communicate and then attempting to replicate the same behavior. Furthermore, Bandura states that learning every single thing from personal experience is hard and could be potentially dangerous. He claims that much of a person's life is rooted in social experiences. Thus, observing others is naturally advantageous to gaining knowledge and skills. And now, let us know what is Tomasello's collaborative communication theory. Michael Tomasello was born on January 18, 1950. He is an American developmental and comparative psychologist, as well as a linguist. He is an originator of the collaborative communication theory, which posits that shared intentionality is a key factor in the development of human language and communication. Tomasello was born in Borto, Florida. He received his bachelor's degree in 1972 from Duke University and his doctorate in experimental psychology in 1980 from University of Georgia. Tomasello was a professor of psychology and anthropology at Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia, US during the 1980s and 1990s. He works on child language acquisition as a crucially important aspect of the enculturation process. He is a critic of Noam Chomsky's universal grammar, rejecting the idea of innate universal grammar and instead proposing a functional theory of language development. The Tomasello's collaborative communication theory suggests that human language evolved from a shared intentionality that emerged from collaborative activities. Its focus is on how people collaborate in a shared communicative space and how this can be used to explain the development of language. Researchers have explored how cooperative communication can be used to explain the development of language, how the use of language contributes to social relationships, and how communication can be used to support successful collaboration. Studies have also explored how communication can be used to support learning and problem solving. The theory states that effective communication is based on shared understanding between the participants rather than one-way communication. This suggests that successful communication requires both parties to be actively engaged in the conversation and to take an active role in developing a shared understanding of the topic being discussed. The theory also suggests that both parties must be willing to make concessions to ensure that the conversation is mutually beneficial, based on the notion that successful communication relies on collaboration and cooperation between two or more people. By viewing communication as a collaborative process, it allows for a more effective, productive, and successful result.
Good day, ma'am. My name is JEBRAIDAH ABDULKADIR, and now we are going to proceed to the next part of our report, which is the process of language acquisition. Let's proceed to the part 2 of our report, the language acquisition process. Overview of social interaction theory. Language acquisition through social interaction refers to the process by which children learn to communicate with others through the use of language. This process begins in the first few years of life and is influenced by a variety of factors, including the child's age, language learning environment, and cultural context. This means that social interaction is a process where children use their language that they've learned from their cultures or environment and use it to communicate with others. There are several theories that explore the role of social interaction in language acquisition, including the social interactionist theory, Vygotsky's social cultural theory, Bandura's social learning theory, Tomasello's collaborative communication theory, and the constructivist theory. These theories suggest that children learn language by participating in social interactions, observing and imitating the language used by others, and constructing their own understanding of language based on their experience and interactions with others. These theories shows that children can learn different languages through social interaction, so they could gain experience on how to use language for communication. Research has shown that social interaction is a key factor in language acquisition, and that children who are exposed to more diverse and engaging language learning environment tend to have better language skills. This includes interactions with caregivers, siblings, peers, and other people in the child's environment. This shows that if a child is more exposed in interacting with other people, such as his or her parents and friends, he or she can develop his or her language. These are the process of language acquisition through social interaction: exposure to language, imitation and repetition, practice and reinforcement, vocabulary and grammar development, language comprehension and production, language and cognitive development. These are the definitions of the processes. First, exposure to language. Children are exposed to language through social interactions with caregivers and other people in their environment. This includes verbal and nonverbal communication, such as talking, singing, reading, and gesturing. Imitation and repetition. Children learn language by observing and imitating the language used by others. They repeat words and phrases that they hear, gradually building up their vocabulary and language skills. Practice and reinforcement. Children practice and reinforce their language skills through ongoing social interaction with others. This may include asking questions, making requests, and engaging in conversation with caregivers and peers. Vocabulary and grammar development. As children continue to learn and practice language, they develop their vocabulary and grammar skills. They learn the rules and structures of language, including word order, verb tense, and verb agreement. Language comprehension and production. As children's language skills improve, they become more proficient at comprehending and producing language. They are able to understand and use language to communicate their thoughts and feelings with others. And last, language and cognitive development. The process of language acquisition is closely linked to cognitive development. As children learn language, they also develop their thinking, problem-solving, and reasoning skills. Overall, the process of language acquisition through social interaction is complex and multifaceted, and it plays a central role in the development of children's cognitive, social, and emotional skills.
Children naturally acquire a language in social contexts where they interact with their caregivers. Indeed, research shows that social interaction facilitates lexical and phonological development at the early stages of child language acquisition. Good day, Ma'am Rhodora. I am ANDREI NICOR from Group 7, and today I will be giving examples of language acquisition through social interaction. Example number 1. A child learning to say hello and goodbye by imitating their caregiver's greeting and farewell rituals. Mimicry begins at birth. Many newborns, for instance, copy facial movements such as sticking out their tongue. But age 1 marks the beginning of true imitation or imitation with intent. Children tend to follow what is being told to them repeatedly and slowly, utter those words slowly every time they see their caregiver. Example number 2. A child's learning to ask for what they want by using phrases like I want or can I have after hearing these phrases used by their caregivers. Children learns a lot of new words by listening to you and other adults and guessing from context. They also learn from new experience and listening to stories read aloud. They will still understand many more words than they can say, and as caregivers teach them how to attain one thing by asking, they will use the phrases shown to get what they want. Next is a child learning to use polite phrases like please and thank you by observing and imitating their caregivers' use of these phrases. When someone gives you something, the proper reply is thank you. It conveys respect and appreciation. When you ask for something, end your statement or begin your question with please. It also conveys respect and graciousness. When children hear you say these words, they will follow you, and thus they have attained politeness, or it can be taught directly. Next example is a child learning to use verb tense correctly by hearing and repeating sentences with the correct verb tense, such as I am walking or I was walking. Children tend to follow words that nursery rhymes or cartoon shows. Since most of them teaches a child proper sentence structuring, they will imitate it and they will utter it with no faults. It can be a form of song that they will utter repeatedly, and afterwards they will use it when they are doing the certain action, like the example in the screen. Next is a child learning new vocabulary words by listening to and repeating words used by their caregivers and peers during conversation and other social interaction. Caregivers, lolas, titas, and titos will teach their children, niece, grandchildren how to say words, and children will follow what they are saying and thus form a new word they acquired and learned. Next is a child learning to use language to express their emotions and thought by participating in conversation with caregivers and peers and using words to describe their feelings and experiences. When a child needs attention and the older ones are busy, they would interrupt the conversation and express their emotions. Just like when they are feeling upset because they've left behind and they would show sadness or irritation. Overall, these examples illustrate how children learn language through social interaction with others and by observing and imitating the language used by their caregivers and peers.
At this part, we will be discussing about the criticisms related to the language acquisition through social interaction theories. The criticisms related to the language acquisition through social interaction theories. And here are the several criticisms of language acquisition through social interaction theories. The first is the limited generalizability. Some critics argue that language acquisition through social interaction theories may not be applicable to all children or all language learning situations. For example, these theories may be less applicable to children who are learning a second or third language later in life, or to children with language-based learning disabilities. Second is the lack of empirical support. Some research has called into question the degree to which social interaction alone is responsible for language acquisition. For example, some studies have found that children who are exposed to more extensive social interactions may not necessarily have better language skills than children who are exposed to less extensive social interactions. Third, the inadequate explanation of language learning milestones. Language acquisitions through social interaction theories may not fully explain why children go through predictable stages of language development, or why some children may experience delays or deviations in their language development. Fourth, the limited focus on linguistic input. These theories focus on the role of social interactions in language learning, but they may not adequately address the role of other factors, such as the quality and quantity of linguistic input that children receive. Fifth, the culture-specific assumptions. Some critics argue that language acquisition through social interaction theories may be based on culturally specific assumptions about how language is learned and used, which may not be applicable to all cultural contexts. As a conclusion, while these theories have gained widespread support and have a significant impact on our understanding of language acquisition, they are not without their criticisms. Some researchers have questioned the degree to which social interactions alone are responsible for language acquisition, and have pointed to the potential role of innate language abilities and other factors in language learning. Additionally, these theories may not be applicable to all language learning situations or cultural context, and they may not fully explain the complex and nuanced nature of language or the individual differences in language development. The potential for language learning to enhance social and cognitive development. Research has shown that language learning can have a number of positive effects on children's social and cognitive development, including enhanced problem-solving skills, improved memory and attention, and increased empathy and social awareness. Before we end our discussion, let me share this statement. Language acquisition through social interaction theories may not be the whole story, but they're definitely worth a shout out for their contributions to our understanding of how we learn to communicate with others. After all, without social interaction, we'd be left with a bunch of grunts and gestures. And who wants that? And that's it for our report. Thank you for watching and have a great day ahead.